Hey guys, it's Mikexingchen. When we think of giants, most people probably think of Goliath, Jack in the Beanstalk, or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, who is both terrifying and delicious. But there are many speculations about a race of giant humans who lived before and alongside modern man. Mentions of giants can be found in historical texts like the Bible and the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were talked about by historians such as Pliny and Josephus. Their images could be found painted inside caves and tombs. So if these giants did in fact exist, it is unclear what eventually happened to them. Did they all disappear, or perhaps they're still living somewhere in some unexplored part of the planet? Now, there were a lot of requests for this video, and this topic is something that is super interesting to me, so let's keep an open mind and take a look at some clues that may suggest giants were in fact real. Number 1. The giant footprint of South Africa. This amazing footprint in granite was first discovered in 1912 near the South African town of Umpholozi, close to the border with Swaziland, by a hunter named Staffo Coetzee. You can actually see a pretty good video of this footprint on explorer Michael Tillinger's channel. I have that for you in the description box. The footprint, known to locals as the footprint of God or Goliath's footprint, is about 4 feet or 1.2 meters in length, and based on that, the hypothetical owner of this footprint would have been 24 to 27 feet or 7.5 to 8 meters in height. According to our current understanding of the formation of granites in Earth's history, this footprint is estimated to be between 200 million and 3 billion years old. It has proved to be a brain teaser for geologists who have trouble explaining it. But for locals, the explanation is pretty simple. It is the footprint left behind by a ginormous being in the distant mythical past. But skeptics reject the giant footprint theory. Some say the footprint could have been formed by natural erosion or carved by regular-sized humans. For example, Dr. J. Weil, a nuclear chemist, pointed out that the rock is intrusive granite. This means that it was formed underground. Thus, the only time a foot could have sunken into it and left behind a print was when it was several hundred degrees hot deep below the Earth's surface. However, supporters of the giant footprint theory say that skeptics take the current scientific consensus about how granite rocks were formed for granted. They argue that developments in understanding of the geological process that led to the formation of the outcrop could show that warm molten magma was exposed on the Earth's surface, thus allowing a potential 27-foot tall giant weighing several tons to sink his foot into it. And in regards to the theory that the footprint could be formed by natural erosion, Professor Pieter Wagner from the University of Port Elizabeth in South Africa suggests that there is a higher probability of little green men arriving from space and licking it out with their tongues than being created by natural erosion. Number 2. The Mummified Finger. Gregory Spiri, a well-known entrepreneur from Switzerland, used to work as a private investigator. In 1988, he contacted and met with an old man from a grave robber dynasty in a farmhouse about 100 kilometers northeast of Cairo to take a look at the family treasure, which was wrapped in old rags. It was a giant finger, and it appeared rather grotesque, chopped at the bone with a fingernail still attached to it. It was also accompanied by an X-ray photo. Sporty said, "I was totally flabbergasted when I saw the dark brown giant finger. I was allowed to take it in hand and also to take pictures. A bill was put next to it to get a size comparison. The bent finger was split open and covered with dry mold." The old man said the finger was found in the grave of a giant mummy somewhere near the Giza pyramids. Were the finger to belong to a human being, that human would be some 16 feet or nearly 5 meters tall. Spiri tried to compel the old man to sell the finger, but the old man would not, saying it was too important to his family. Number 3. Historical mentions. Throughout history, there were many records that seem to indicate the presence of giant humanoids. For example, explorer John Smith wrote in 1608, "The Saski-Saknags are a giant-like people. They measured the calf of the largest man's leg and found it 3/4 of a yard about, and all the rest of his limbs were in proportion." Flavius Josephus, a 1st century Jewish scholar and historian, wrote in his Antiquities of the Jews, for which reason they removed their camp to Hebron, and when they had taken it, they slew all the inhabitants. There were till then left the race of giants, who had bodies so large and a countenance so entirely different from other men that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike to any credible relations of other men. And finally, Roman historian Pliny also mentions that in the reign of Claudius from 41 to 54 AD, a 9-foot 9-inch giant named Gabarus was brought to Rome from Arabia. Claudius placed him at the head of the famed Adeotrix legions. The giant so awed his troops that some worshipped him as a god. Number 4, the mystery of Lovelock Cave. Many Native American tribes tell stories about the long-forgotten existence of a race of humans that were much taller and stronger than ordinary men. The Paiute, a tribe that settled in the Nevada region thousands of years ago, have a legend about a race of red-haired giants which were described as savages and cannibals. Legend tells that the giants waged war on the Paiute and all neighboring tribes. Finally, the tribes united against them, and the last remaining red-haired giants were chased off and hid in the cave. The tribes then started a fire at the cave entrance, suffocating and burning them alive. The entrance of the cave was sealed, but after the cave was discovered again in 1886 by a mining engineer named John T. Reed, the large amount of guano deposit inside the cave attracted the attention of a mining company that began excavating the precious resource in 1911. After the surface layer of the guano had been mined, strange objects started to surface, which led to an official excavation performed in 1992 and again in 1924 by the University of California. An intriguing find was a pair of 15-inch long sandals that showed signs of having been worn. Allegedly, other unusual large items were recovered but have since been locked away in museum warehouses, maybe Warehouse 13, and private collections. A piece of evidence that remains on site until this day is a giant handprint, double the size of a normal man's hand, imprinted on a boulder inside the cave. Also, according to a 1931 article published in the Nevada Review Minor, 2 giant skeletons had been found buried in a dry lake bed close to Lovelock, Nevada. The oversized remains measured 8.5 and 10 feet in height and were mummified in a manner similar to the one employed by ancient Egyptians. What's interesting is that these mummified giant remains had red hair. While some researchers believe the reddish color is a result of the interaction with the environment in which they were buried, the mummies do sort of verify the legends which spoke of red-haired giants. And finally, number 5, giant bones discovered around the world. One of the biggest arguments against the existence of giants is that, well, if they did exist, where are their bones at? According to reports from around the world, many of these bones were actually found. For example, the New York Times reported on December 20th, 1897, that the skeleton of a man of gigantic size with a skull as large as half a bushel was found buried in a mound in Wisconsin. Another story from the London Globe talked about the discovery of human bones that are twice the size of that of regular people in the Bronze Age cemetery of Castelnaudary, France in the winter of 1890. Here's a look of 3 bone fragments found: the humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft compared to a normal-sized humerus. The bones were discovered by anthropologist Georges Vacher de Lapouge and were dated to the Neolithical period. Lapouge estimated from the bones found that these humans may have been about 3.5 meters or 11 feet 6 inches tall. Then there is the rarely seen part of the upper leg bone with hip joint of a giant that would have stood about 12 feet or 3.6 meters tall. This bone has been in the vaults of the medical school at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg since the early 1960s, when it was found by miners in a mine in northern Namibia. You know, I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, and when I sat down to make it, I found so much really interesting information about the possible existence of giants, and there was no way I could put all that information into one video, so I do encourage all of you who are interested in this topic to go and explore for yourself. If you think about it, if this was all true and giants who were 12 feet or 25 feet or maybe even bigger did exist, this would actually solve a lot of questions about how many of the world's ancient megalithic structures like the pyramids were created. And speaking of the pyramids, I know every year there's a new report with someone who figured out how the pyramids were built, but let's be honest, there's still a lot of unanswered questions in any of these theories. I'm going to make a video about the creation of the pyramids later. All I'm saying is that there's still so much we don't know, so it's good to keep an open mind about all the possibilities. And I really like this saying from a geologist named Natish Priyadarshi, who said, "We live in a highly advanced technical world, but there are nevertheless a great many mysteries all around us. Ancient places and mysterious beings, sunken worlds and cultures, landscapes imbued with symbolism, unexplained apparitions, and unbelievable finds from ancient times. All of these remain mysteries for humankind despite intense investigations. But guys, love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe that giants once existed? And do you believe that giants are still out there somewhere today? And I'm not talking about like Shaq. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the like and share button. I would really appreciate that. And all of my social media information is in the description box below. See you later.